All right, our next speaker is a lover of butter. She loves butter, and I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Lover of butter and babies and her husband. I mean, that's the perfect package, right? That's pretty good. She works right at the South County Food Co-op right across the street on Main Street, where she puts her love of butter to good use, making all things sweet. She and her family maintain a small farm on Winter Street where she grows vegetables and some gray hair. Family means the world to her, and her world is her family. Tonight she will be sharing her story about surviving childhood abuse. Please welcome Liz Gledhill to the stage.
Some of you may know me from the recent election in South Kingstown, and some of you might recognize me as the baker over at the South County Food Co-op. But I find that most often I'm recognized for the impression that I left as a student within the South Kingstown school system. And that's not to say I was a troublemaker. It was actually quite the opposite. People remember me best for my fearlessness and my advocacy for justice. Students and teachers alike knew that if there was a problem, that I was the girl for the job and I would address it. Because of that, teachers really kind of adored me and forgave my half-assed projects, my late papers, my slacking on homework. They likely thought they were doing me a favor when they gave me passing grades when I really didn't deserve them. But what they didn't know was that by looking the other way, they were enabling my parents to abuse, molest, and hurt their children. I came here tonight to tell them what they missed and how they could have saved me. I'm not here to judge or to chastise, I just want to empower them. And if you see yourself in my story tonight, I hope that you'll vow never to let another child fall through the cracks. People often ask me, why are you such an advocate? What motivates you to talk, to speak, to reach out to people? And I usually tell them something along the lines of, well, it's the right thing to do. But the truth is, my brain is wired differently than everybody else's. I am much different than you or you or you. When I was 4 years old, I told my parents that my older brother had been molesting me. I don't really remember much about the time, but from what I gather, it had been happening for many years. My whole world changed. Everything was black and white. Everything was right or wrong. I found myself for the rest of my life compulsively categorizing things into right and wrong and black and white. School was absolutely no exception. I had a problem with the lunch lines being too long, so I set up a protest. I was discouraged that the school budget was getting slashed, so I wrote an op-ed to the newspaper. I was unyielding to the shades of gray that were in the world. I was inspired, I was passionate, I was loving, I was displaying the very traits that I needed so badly to see in my own life. Teachers were applauding me, but not wondering why I wasn't doing my homework or completing my projects. No one wanted to know why I didn't want to go home. No one asked and no one cared. I was a good kid. As teachers and people heard about the things that were coming out of my house, all of them would say things to me like, oh, I just knew something wasn't right. A little bit of my soul was dying every single day. At home I was loved, but really I was lucky. The other children in my house, they didn't share the same good fortune. If they weren't beaten by my father, they were berated by my mother. We were often ridiculed for being slow. My mother famously called my brother Ree and my sister Tard, and she would make them chant their names throughout the house, so we would hear retard all the time. When my sister confided to the authorities that she'd been molested for several years, her claims were dismissed because we were from a good family. Years later, when my other sister and I came forward and confirmed her truths with our own, the police believed us, but they lacked the physical evidence they needed to prosecute the case. Our case was never prosecuted, and it likely never will be. The same teachers who told me they just knew something wasn't right in my house, these were the same teachers that avoided eye contact with my sisters on the days they would be mysteriously out sick and then arrive to school, unable to comfortably sit in their seats because of the bruises on their legs. These same teachers who applauded my speeches in front of the town council, these were the teachers that didn't question how I could write such moving speeches but failed our English class. If I had the courage, I would have told them that I couldn't do my homework while my mother was screaming and throwing glasses against the wall. I couldn't tell them that my anatomy project was in my bedroom and I couldn't go get it because it was a place that I feared to go. A place I could hear my sisters crying for help as my father committed unspeakable crimes against them. So why don't teachers speak up? The reason why I believe teachers don't recognize abuse is because they're trained to see it in one place only, and that's trouble. They don't look for it in the good kids. The kid who's too violent, he must be exposed to something at home. We should call and check with the parents. Or the over-sexualized adolescent, we should definitely check in and make sure she's okay. But the student who's motivated, enthusiastic, but doesn't do her homework, there's nothing wrong with her. She's fine, but as you can all hear, I was not fine. Spending an average of 7 hours a day with their students, nearly half of their waking hours, teachers are as much responsible for their children's safety as they are their education. Some of you may be wondering why I didn't report my parents myself, and for you, I really don't have an answer. There was a time in my life that I let the guilt of that consume me, but I chose to forgive myself, and instead of wallowing in regret, I'm sharing my story, and I'm hoping that it's going to empower people. The CDC estimates that there's a case of child abuse reported every 10 seconds. Since I started speaking, that's 40 children that are suffering from child abuse. By the end of tonight, 4 children will die. 4 dead children. You don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who it's going to be. Nobody does. The face of abuse, it's not a familiar one, but it's a common one. Teachers aren't looking for it in the right places. They're looking for it in the right people, and that's the problem. And that's why I share my story. I'm hoping I can fix that.